Hello, everyone. Welcome to the iSphere. I'm
I'm Joy.
and today we've got something new. To be honest, we're going to be discussing Hocus Pocus, Hocus Pocus 1, Hocus Pocus 2, and then having a wee bit of a discussion surrounding sequels and reboots and how this kind of like modern Disney trend of doing all that stuff. Obviously, it's a wee bit different from some of the hardcore reboots, like a live action, well, quote unquote live action Lion King or Aladdin. But it's still, in my opinion, very much a kind of sequel aimed at that kind of nostalgia that people have for the older versions. So Hocus Pocus, what came out in, was it 1993?
1993.
So yeah. I was minus 3 years old at that point. I'm sorry, Joy, for mentioning that. But yeah, I was
6.
yeah, I was minus 3. So it was the first time, like, for this podcast, it was the first time I watched both films. But you, Joy, you've been watching this for ever.
Yeah, 29 years every Halloween. First to my parents' despair, but then not so much my husband because he also loves it. So, but yeah, I've been watching it for a very long time. It's been a huge thing with my friends, like with my in-group. But yeah, it was. I'm reading the comments. Hocus Pocus 1993. Saw it for the first time a few years ago. Yeah, there's some people that have never seen it before. They've absorbed it through osmosis through the internet, but there's some people who've never actually seen it. But if you grew up with it, it's got a very kind of still active fandom, I guess, that kind of spans through different generations. So it's fun in a lot of online spaces to see how the fandom's evolved over the last few years. And it'll be interesting to see how Hocus Pocus 2 affects it.
I was wondering that. So before we maybe kind of outline the films, was there a massive kind of fans of the first film really, really demanding this kind of sequel? Or is it something that Disney have identified as, this has a great fan base around it, we'll put together a sequel?
There have been people looking for even just a direct to VHS. That's how old the fandom is, wanting a direct to VHS sequel since the first one came out. I had friends that were older than me who fully wanted a sequel and everything else when I was younger. And then as I grew up, there was always a year, maybe this year we'll get a sequel, maybe this year, maybe this year. And then it kind of became a good thing, maybe it's for the best that we're not getting a sequel because of how Disney was doing certain things. So I think when it was announced that Hocus Pocus 2 was coming out, a lot of people were shocked. Because, it's almost, 30 years. 30 years, 20 years, 30.
29 years since.
29 years.
Which is
that's a long time to wait for a sequel. That's Good Omens level of fandom where the book was out for 30 years and then they made the TV show. That's a long time to wait for something.
Yeah. So I'd like to give a wee shout out to Hex. Hex has chipped into your mic fund, Joy, via Ko-Fi. So
thank you.
So it begins. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously you've been steeped in Hocus Pocus and you've watched it every year, and it has become that thing.
It's a cult classic in our house. Yeah, it's on par with the Addams Family for us.
Right.
Which we watch the Addams Family religiously through Halloween season, but we also watch it at other times. But Hocus Pocus is one of those things where it's spooky season because you've broken out Hocus Pocus.
Right. I mean, it's good well timed because it's in October.
Yeah.
Now, so yeah, but so Disney. So it's available on Disney Plus. The second film now. I think both of them are probably on Disney Plus. But it's now available on Disney Plus. I think it was released kind of start of October. It's a couple of days ago.
It was released Friday 30th, so it's literally just Friday.
Yeah, so
it came out.
Yeah, 2 days ago. Jeez. So already I feel like I've I've brought up my level of Hocus Pocus knowledge has soared in the past. Well, today.
24 hours.
Yeah, in the past 24 hours, I now know more about Hocus Pocus. And kind of coming in completely cold. The first film was actually really enjoyable. It's very It's like it's very kind of its time. It's very 90s. It's
Yeah. It's very
campy.
nostalgia.
It's nostalgia. It's good fun. So maybe we talk about that before we talk about the second one, because the second one,
Yeah, yeah.
the time jump between the first and the second one is 29 years. Both how long it took for the sequel to be made, but also like the film 2 is 29 years later,
Hmm.
and has all the changes associated with that. So 1993, like no technology existed, right? There was like no phones, there was no electricity, there was nothing.
Practically the
There was
Dark Ages.
there was no me. So yeah, complete Dark Ages. But yeah, I suppose do you want to give an overview of maybe the plot of the first film?
So
Um,
the plot of the first film starts with Emelina Tompkinson. They've got all these pilgrimy names and speak thee and thou very badly. Small child gets snatched by the witches, and the witches devour children's souls to stay young forever. That is basically the whole witches' shtick, is that they are very evil. They eat children to stay young and beautiful, which, classic witch kind of villain story for Disney at that time. And Thackeray Binks, at the time as a boy, tries to save them, fails, gets turned into a cat. He is now immortal. They get hung, basically, classic witch hanging in Salem, and they curse the town of Salem so that if a virgin lights the black flame candle, they will be brought back from hell, basically, and they will come back to life for one night, in which case they need to steal another child and take their soul, otherwise they will go back to being dead. That's basically your premise. Fast forward 300 years, and you meet Max and his little sister, who are straight from California, and they hate moving to Salem because it's not as cool as California. And Max is very obviously unhappy to be there. His sister's 8, so she doesn't really care. And they go trick-or-treating. Max meets the girl he has a crush on at school, and they convince them to go to the Sanderson sisters' house. He's fooling around, and he jokingly lights the black flame candle, thinking nothing will happen. It resurrects the witches and
because he's a massive virgin.
He's a massive virgin. It's a thing that the movie will never let him forget, that he is in fact a virgin. And it's really funny because this film actually was one of the reasons why parents suddenly had to talk to their children about sex. Because everybody was like, "What's a virgin?"
Yeah.
And it was one of those, okay, well, I guess we have to address this now because Disney put the word virgin in everyone's mouth.
And I mean, the virgin is used a lot for like good comic effect and like throughout the entire film. It's just this boy is essentially getting called a virgin by fucking everyone, his little sister included.
His little sister's dialogue's weird some of the time.
It's very weird.
His little sister's weird. I mean, that we were watching it, and Mothman was kind of going, if my sister said to you, my brother likes your tits, how would you react? And I'd be like, I'd be really weirded out. Yeah. I would not laugh. I would be extremely uncomfortable. But it was that kind of 90s insert director, small child dialogue vomit out. It was very, very weird. But yeah, it was kind of interesting that they, just reading Hex's comment, it's always a focus on the girl's virginity. It was kind of nice that they made it a guy. Because a lot of the media based around witchcraft at the time was, you had the kind of the virginal, flesh-blooded female girl getting like her virginity and taken by evil and all these sort of things. So it was a kind of a fresh take for the 90s, although now we would still probably cringe pretty hard at it. It's a weird one. So they go through the whole motions of trying to defeat the sisters. And in the end, it's the power of love and family that defeats them, because Max tries to sacrifice himself to save his sister from having her soul being eaten. But yeah, it was a fun one. It was a fun, campy, very kind of over the top. You have this Bette Midler character who's known for singing, and she's getting to be very vampy and very kind of fun and just absolutely just having a blast being evil. Like it's some of the best dialogue I feel like comes from Hocus Pocus 1, and you get that kind of, we haven't really seen Disney female villains like that since the 90s, because now we're in the era of making the villains understandable, which is also something we will talk about in Hocus Pocus too, because yes, they got the same treatment.
Yeah. But no, I think it was fun. Like, the reason why the film is so fun to watch, and again, I'm coming at this completely fresh, having watched it this morning. It was fun because like the villains just get to be bad. Like, they get to be that kind of outrageously evil, to the point where it's almost kind of fun to watch and enjoy. Like, I mean, because at the end of the day, they are literally consuming children's souls. They are murdering kids, and like, it's. I think in contrast to what we'll go on to talk about in regards to the approach to villains in Disney films, at least now, is it's just fun seeing a baddie be a baddie, and there you go, Bette Midler, baddie, I for Scotland, 2022.
She did it so well too. Like, she was fully immersed in just being the baddest witch she could be. It was very fun. It was very like the Wicked Witch of the West type thing. It was that kind of very camp, over the top performance, and it was fantastic. I mean, they must have had so much fun with it back in the day, and you can see them having fun with it in Hocus Pocus 2. Like, the best thing about Hocus Pocus 2 is how much fun the original cast is having with reviving these characters.
Yeah. I think we'll probably start to introduce some Hocus Pocus 2 stuff now, just so we can actually talk about it. But yeah, like, I very much enjoyed Hocus Pocus 1. I can see why it became the kind of cult film that it did. And I think one of the things that's quite interesting, me and Joy were talking about this prior to the stream, but we were saying that the way that the 1993 film kind of captures that era, of nostalgia, is a very nostalgic watch, that I think a lot of the newer stuff struggles to capture in terms of like the classroom.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of modern representations of the classroom that I think obviously a lot of the media that I grew up with, that always depicted the kind of American classroom and the dynamics of, people chatting in the classroom. There is something extremely nostalgic about it, even though I have no nostalgia for the film itself. It kind of still captures that kind of 90s nostalgia, which, again, I'm a kind of later 90s baby, effectively, so I didn't know fuck all until I was about 4, and by that time it was 2000s. But it was it was a very enjoyable film. It's easy to see how that becomes like a comfort watch at this time of year as well. It had all the kind of I don't know if my opinion has just been because I've seen stuff online about it that my mind's naturally making the connection. Of course, this is a culty film, but watching it did feel like quite a cozy Halloween watch, which I don't think the sequel manages to capture, funnily enough. And maybe we can.
It's the difference between a Disney movie and a Disney movie channel. Or Disney Channel movie. It's that subtle difference between a full Disney movie and the Disney Channel where there's a model at the end, which is what this has. But it's also suffering a little bit from the girl-bossification of Disney villains at the minute, which is a thing we will get into. But it's that kind of it was at a peak time in the 90s, and the 80s and 90s was like the peak time for a lot of creepy media. There's been a lot of fantastic things that have, if you try to, even with the Addams Family, although I enjoy the new Addams Family content, I don't think it captures the actual spirit of the original content in the way that the 90s stuff did. I think in the 90s it was a very I think they could get away with certain things that I think they would now be scared of doing, because I think they're afraid of being problematic with certain things. I don't think anyone would try to do, just thinking again of the Addams Family, I don't think you would get anyone making Morticia and Gomez as horny for each other as they were in the 90s films. I don't think they would get away with that now, because they'd be worried about it coming off as over the top or not suitable for children. Whereas the Addams Families were PG-13, you could watch with an adult. But yeah, it's that kind of it feels a little bit sanitized. It feels as if they've tried to sanitize certain things for commercial value, which I think is where it falls down, because the original Hocus Pocus, there was very little merchandise. There did not seem to be plans to merchandise Hocus Pocus. Whereas this one is definitely getting merchandised. Like, I've already seen the merchandise rolling out for it, and I'm going, there was no official merchandise until I think at least 2010 that I could find in the UK when I was even as an adult. Like I go into the Disney store looking for stuff from like my friends' kids. You'd never see it. It's a very, very recent thing where they actually merchandised Hocus Pocus officially.
Someone's just saying in chat, it's a whole write-up on that kind of camp and silly fun of TV and movies dying with 9/11.
Yeah, it did.
I can see that. Especially like your kind of earlier like 2000 stuff that has very like a much more sanitized kind of approach to things.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I like Hex's point. It's
here,
weird how we live in an era that is more sexualized but also very sanitized. It's a weirdly it sounds weird to say it's a sexually sanitized media, but a lot of the stuff that we consume is. Everybody is conventionally.
Everyone's beautiful, but nobody's horny. That was it.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Everybody's beautiful, but nobody's sexy. That's what it is. Everyone is a very, very pretty, very, very perfect, but there's no chemistry.
Cool.
By
the way, I'm gonna eat. Sorry, I'm hungry.
Go right ahead. Yeah. we're now reading into the mukbang part of the podcast, but it's the it is a lot of it's to do with commercialization, and I do like how in Hocus Pocus 2 they are self-aware of that, because that is a huge part of the second book, is that it is commercialized. It's no longer just the occasional, it's the book tour, but everything, you go into in the first book it's implied that it's a museum, but it looks very neglected and very run down. It's not remotely like encouraged, or people, you probably get dragged there with school. Whereas the second one, it is a full-on shop. It's an experience. It's like going to the Harry Potter world. Everything is very sanitized. Everything is very aesthetically pleasing to look at. Everything looks very mystic, which I also have views on as well, because I think I read an article about it, and it was apparently Hocus Pocus 2 was very informed by witch talk. Which, if you follow my blog, you will know I'm not a fan of the pagan stuff that's on a lot of TikTok, because a lot of it is just commercialized, capitalistic spiritualism, which I am not a huge fan of.
By crystals and stuff like that.
Yeah, crystals. I mean, it was a thing when I was younger as well. You had a lot of, we called them plagans. It was people playing at spirituality. See if I can say this word, spirituality. And it was a very kind of like, if you have the nicest athame, you have the nicest cauldron, obviously you were taking the craft more seriously, whereas that has nothing to do with how paganism or witchcraft works at all. And it's interesting to see this shift towards the more commercialized aspect of it. And I think the Hocus Pocus film, when it touches on it, it is very, look, you can literally see Disney merch in the background. The witch's house literally looks like you're walking into a witchcraft themed Disney store, which I would, when I was younger, I would have loved that. I would have been, if I was a child, I would have lived there. You would not have been able to get me out. But it's very interesting to see how it's like, kind of like a nudge, wink, wink towards how capitalistic it is. Whereas the first film did not have that. You had your blatant product placement. Like there's literally a thing where you just see cans of Pepsi I think it's Pepsi. It's either Pepsi or 7-Up just in like the home, and you'll occasionally see like advertising through it. But it wasn't like the buy Disney sort of stuff that you're now seeing.
Yeah.
But yes, Gamer Jam, what's your question?
Sorry, I've got another one. I'll eat that in a second. But no, I think it does become really, really obvious in the second film. And I don't know if there is this kind of interesting comparison between like a sequel being produced for like a cult film that's 29 years old and the over commercialization in the film. We're kind of in that. It's weird because it's like the film isn't the film isn't trying to make a commentary on perhaps Disney's over commercialization. Like I didn't get that feeling, but at the same time, I feel like it's kind of doing it anyway. Because like, I suppose we can kind of walk through we'll touch on bits. We don't want to give too many spoilers away for the second film because it is 2 days old.
It is so brand new, yeah.
But like so the house that the witches have kind of used as their base has gone through the iterations. First film was that museum. Second film becomes this like gift shop that's run by a guy who's absolutely obsessed with the story. And what a so like that whole piece, he's like absolutely obsessed. He's got the witch's spell book in a cabinet. He doesn't know if it's the kind of real one. He just kind of assumes it is, and it does turn out to be the real one. But there's a cauldron filled with stuffed cats from like the like plushy cats from like the first film. There's the books, so like there's copies and like replicas of the spell book that's available on sale. There's potions, there's all that kind of stuff, and I think, I don't know, like for me it's interesting. It's just an interesting parallel between the kind of over commercialization of that and obviously pushing for a sequel. Now, I wouldn't say that the sequel's a bad film. I feel like that's maybe a bit too harsh, and I don't think it. I think it's too harsh to maybe describe it as a cash grab, but it's extremely weak in key areas. And like, I feel because they're trying to make a film that's 29 years after the original, they have this problem where the spotlight is on the original cast to the point where they're introducing lots of new characters. The children from the first film aren't in the second one because obviously they would have grown up and left. But like, there's no, like, they're completely fresh faced and they're all kind of forgettable. They're like completely, I don't remember a single one of their names bar one, and it's like the most basic name. Is like there's one kid called Becca, and I don't know any of the other ones. In fairness, I did kind of speed run watch it, but like none of the newer characters stand out to the same extent that the older ones did, because the sequel has to straddle the maybe introducing new people and a modern audience to it, as well as making sure that there's enough reference to the old cast and like the old plot, and there's lots of wee references in there that people who are big fans or people who've watched the first one will kind of nod and go, oh yeah, that's that's good, that's a nice nod. But for newer people, there's no padding given to any of the other characters in the story in regards to even just wee side character things. There's nothing that makes them 3D. They're very much like they're just there, and they're there.
There is no
to
build up
interact.
for why you should like any of the people.
Yeah,
that is as a writer, that is my issue with it. There is no even 30 seconds of explanation for something. You just immediately you are thrown in, and you get there's conflict between these friends. Cool, but why? You don't. It's something that should have been. I feel like some of the development should have been done differently. I feel like they were so eager to get the original cast back in that they skipped over a lot of things, and a lot of things were done out of order. And it's a thing I've noticed a lot with a lot of more of Disney stuff of late. It feels as if the storyboarding has been rearranged and chopped so much that it is no longer in the correct order, and there's just not enough depth given to it. Because even with the 90s one, you do get a very abrupt intro to things. But you do get an immediate sense of, oh, this is this character's personality. Whereas I don't think you get any of the girls' personality. You could literally swap any of the three girls for each other and you would not know. There's no, oh, this is the sassy one, or oh, this is the the temper tantrum one. They gave us more intro. They gave us more character for the Sanderson sisters that we did not need because we know who they are.
Yeah.
And I will say that the children that did the Sanderson sisters as children, they were fantastic at mirroring their adult counterparts. I thought they did a really good job of the. I mean, if you've never seen a teenager mimicking Bette Midler, it is fantastic. It was a really, really good character that they did. But then the actual girls, the heroes, don't get the same treatment. And I was going, that's a weird choice.
And I think they do try and parallel that first one where you do get an opening in Salem 300 years ago, or well, 329 years ago, or however, a lot longer. But the film starts kind of cold opening with them as kids, and I suppose this is where we can maybe start like talking about the kind of girl bossification aspect of it, but. And just the general push to try and make the witches a bit more sympathetic. And I feel like that's something that the original never had to try and do. They were just evil. But instead you have the main witch, Winnie, as a 8-year-old, or I don't know how fucking old she's
Winnie's 16.
In the opening.
I thought she was supposed to be 16 because they're talking about marrying her off, and she's.
I thought back then they wouldn't have cared about that. No, age-wise,
she's been found. She was caught. They talk about how she was caught smooching Billy. Yeah, who ends up being the zombie. It was a whole her whole arc starts with she's being forced into marriage because both of her parents are dead. This 16-year-old girl is taking care of Mary and Sarah, and. The reverend is trying to take the girls away because she should get married and she should do they're basically trying to split the sisters up. Is the driving force for them to become evil is the town tried to split them up. So they run into the magic woods and they meet a witch. And
she's not mentioned in the first film, that witch, is she?
No, it annoys the shit out of me because the book, the book with the eye and everything else, it's supposed to have come directly from Satan. It was supposed to come from the pact that the sisters made with Satan to get their powers, and now it comes from some girl boss witch in the forest who's telling them, don't ever let the patriarchy separate you from your sisters. And I'm going, oh, we're doing this. Oh. It was the fact just left it as they made a choice to be evil because that's more fun.
Was there not? There's a section as well where she's like, "Oh, you've got a mean temper. I like that in a girl." It's just very okay.
Which I think is a direct response to Disney being told for decades that their heroes, their princesses and their female heroines had no personality beyond being noble. So I think it's their response to a lot of their villains is, well, no, look, the villains have these character traits that you wanted, and going, that's not better. You want the hero to have some of those traits. You want the hero to be more relatable, not the villain.
Yeah.
But and that just kind of takes away the villain. It's almost like trying to make a sympathetic villain without understanding why people want that. Because the sympathetic villain works in certain format. It does not work for Cruella de Vil. I don't think it works for Hocus Pocus. It was a nice campy movie, but I think it took away a lot from the original. If you now consider Hocus Pocus 2 to be canon, I think the Winifred sisters are now made weaker in the first one because they lose some of the funness of it. Sometimes people are just evil. Sometimes people just make bad choices because they want power. What is wrong with that? With just having people do that? It's almost as if they're going, well, no, people understand. People do bad things for understandable reasons. Yeah, some of them do. Some of them just choose to be evil.
Some people are bastards.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I definitely say having watched them basically back to back, and not having the kind of build up of watching Hocus Pocus ages ago, I feel like Hocus Pocus 2 kind of undoes some of the characterization from the first one in regards to the witches. The witches do feel a little bit weaker. Don't get me wrong, they still are fun, but I don't know. It add like the origin story at the start adds this weird dimension where you've now seen them as kids, try like almost being ripped away from each other. Like just having that even in the back of your mind kind of goes, there's a bit more to this, and that does
they
continue.
Could have done that. They still could have done it, but they could have done it better.
Yeah,
but,
and to be, I mean,
yeah.
Again, I don't want to jump immediately to the ending, but like the ending of Hocus Pocus 2 is pretty unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Just because they have to make it a positive ending based on the origin story of the witches. Like they've got to make it a sisters together forever kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which again works
in some. The
first
film was very viscerally satisfying to watch them get turned to dust.
Yeah.
Because you hated them and you wanted to see them get dusted. And this film tries to make it so that you'll be sad that they're gone. I'm going, that's not the point of the Sanderson sisters. We don't want the Sanderson sisters to be sympathetic. We want them to be villains. And we want to rejoice when they get dusted. Even if it's like a Scooby-Doo type thing, like, that kind of campy 90s cartoony thing, where they get dusted every week in a different style. That is the reason you want to see them get dusted. It's not because you sympathise with them. It's because they are the villain.
I was going to say, it's a bold move bringing up Scooby-Doo in this chat again. No, but I think one of the things I have is the way Disney sometimes does kind of like modern stuff with like modern characters that use iPhones and take selfies, is that they tend to have this thing where like all of the teenagers in the film are almost too smart. Like to the point where none of the main characters ever feel like they're under any threat in the film at all. Whereas you literally saw in the first film this little 8-year-old girl get like held by a witch and, like very much in the clutches of the witches, could potentially die. I didn't get that sense. There was no stakes because there was no age gap between any of the characters as well. Because it is three friends who are all in the same class. But like they're outwitting the witches with salt within the first like 20 minutes of meeting them. There's because the three, well, the two at the beginning, three a wee bit later on, but like the two girls are very much into, kind of witch talk, I suppose would be the way they're very much into that. So they already know all of the things.
The basic spell crafting.
They know the basics. They know how to repel dark energy and like, I don't know. It comes across as a wee bit like, okay, so you've wanted to bring them back. You want to have it modern, and like, I know that it's probably the internet's a thing now, so everyone everyone knows everything. But it is a wee bit annoying. There is, however, one point in the film where the protagonists have had a spell cast on them that makes it difficult for them to be heard or be seen to the outside world, and they try and phone a friend and they FaceTime, and the FaceTime's all blanked, and the lassie can't hear them down the phone either. And I was just thinking, why don't they text?
I was screaming that the whole time.
I was like, why don't you text? Like, so, they're, why won't you answer me? Why won't you answer me? Oh, this is a butt dial because I can't hear them. Ha ha ha. It's like, just text. I don't know many teenagers who would immediately go on the phone.
Let alone FaceTime.
Let alone FaceTime.
I mean, maybe this is us showing our age, but I genuinely, they were like, I can't get her to pick up the phone. I'm going, what teenager answers the phone? Text them. Text them. Like, I was streaming it, and Mothman's like, we were in bed watching it, and he's just lying there going, please stop yelling, they can't hear you. Like, he was just like, but he was also laughing. He was just like, he's like, yeah, text them. That makes no sense. Why wouldn't you text them?
But yeah, anyway, that's just my view on like how Disney kind of portrays its more modern teenage protagonists. Is like they're like I don't want to pull out an end like that. I'm not saying Mary Sue or anything like that, but it's just like they're slightly too knowledgeable to the point where they never actually discover much throughout the film, because they already kind of know it in the back of their head. So yeah, it's
there's no growth arc
for the protagonist,
which for that type of media, for the people, for the generations aimed at, for young adult fiction and even younger, the growth arc is a fundamental beat that is being missed in a lot of these stories because they're not letting the hero be vulnerable. It's always we have from personal difficulties.
Sorry, Joy, I think something may be going on with Discord because you are crashing a belter. Oh no. it's a remix. You've been cast.
No.
Right. We'll have to wait for you to. Have you turned your camera on and off? Maybe that'll inject it. Disney's found us and they don't want us talking about. Found us.
We're being cut off.
Speaking of texting, Joy, do you maybe want to hang up and restart the call? Hey, look, it's me. The problem of trying to do a podcast over international waters. There we go.
You're still very pixely sounding.
Oh God! Right, okay. I'm all good. Don't know what the deal is, but we'll kill the call and then I'll call you back.
Yeah, we'll kill it and start.
We've managed to curse the technology. Excellent. Joy banished to the auto-tune realm. Right, so let's start a video call with Joy and pop that out. I was going to say, Joy, you can't leave right now. I can't talk about Hocus Pocus by myself.
I'm back.
Okay, back. Yeah, it looks like you're back. Joy's internet got possessed. Very funny how you're talking about the spell in the FaceTime scene. Yeah, that was excellent timing. You know what comedy's all about. But yeah, I think. Sorry, Joy. What were you saying before we were rudely interrupted by
the internet? I was saying the thing that is missing in a lot of these Disney arcs is the growth arc, where the individuals get to go through actual personal growth and not just inter-relationship growth. But that is a huge thing with young adult and younger, is that part of the curve is that the person learns more about themselves and not just how to communicate with people, whereas they've made a lot of the main focus on things has been learning to communicate with others and to respect others, which is great, but they're neglecting the personal growth arc. It's always about, it's a very sanitized version of, oh, I'm sorry I didn't respect your feelings and now we are best friends again. It's that kind of thing where it can be done very well, but the thing that made a lot of the original Disney stuff good was the person goes through weakness and then triumphs. The modern Disney heroes are never allowed to be weak. They're allowed to have moments of weakness, but they're never allowed to be like Max is fairly shitty to his sister at the start, and his sister's a real brat. And you get to see them overcoming those personal flaws to work together. Yeah,
which is the kind of mutual growth side of things. But at the same time, you've got Max is extremely skeptical about the whole Halloween thing and ghosts in Salem, and his obviously personal growth is actually not just realizing that the witches exist, but also how to actually combat them and interact with that world. So it's weird how you can look at the original and you can see the kind of where the sequel went wrong is that you've got. Yeah, I mean, and they even had a character that they could have done for that. They could have used the girl's boyfriend, Mike, his name, whatever it is. He would have been perfect for that. Yeah. What was her name? Sorry, I'm looking them up right now. Cassie's boyfriend, Mike, would have been the perfect skeptic to get pulled into that. And that's what I thought the story was going. I was like, oh yeah, they're doing a Max. They're pulling in the classic boy character who's a non-believer. He gets barely any dialogue after that, and he's just used for comic effect after that. He's barely any dialogue, but they also they don't do anything with him. He's they don't want to himbify him. They don't want to like they don't want to make him the school bully or the kind of classic jock character. They just make him a fucking dumbass. But like, there's one point during the film that's the kind of the big realization where the friends kind of get back together, and there's a section in it where it's like, oh well, we didn't want to hang around with you because you were with your boyfriend all the time, and all your boyfriend does is make fun of us. And like the boyfriend took issue with it and was like, I don't make fun of you. What are you talking about? And it's like, all you do is say that everything that you like is everything that we like is really weird, and all you do is call our hobbies weird, and you find us weird. Why?
And he's like, yeah, that's not a problem. And they had to explain to him why calling people weird was a problem.
Yeah.
But it was a weird, very weak sort of, you know, it was an unproblematic male character is what I call them when I see them. It's the kind of person who doesn't realize they're doing wrong. And to be honest, there was a part where he was having that moment and I was like, oh, bless him, he is that sort of person. But we had no reason for him to have that moment of growth because he's not a main character who we have been engaging with. They gave him more of a moment of, oh shit, I've been a dumbass for a side character. That should have belonged to one of the main characters, that moment of growth. Again, this is where I take issue with... They missed various narrative beats that I'm going, you are Disney. You should know how to do this. But if looking at Star Wars, they have completely thrown out how to do any sort of storyboarding that makes sense. And it's a problem I've been seeing with a lot of their stuff recently. They are missing vital beats. And I don't know if it's because they're trying to be edgy or if they're just not paying their writers enough. But, you look at it and you're going, this is amateur mistakes. This is the sort of thing you'd be expecting to see people who've never had an editor make these mistakes. And it annoys the hell out of me because if I did that with a lot of my indie stuff, I would be getting lambasted in the reviews about pacing and missed narrative beats and duff characterization. I'm going, Disney's getting away with it because it's Disney.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, if looking at the way that, again, it might be overly cynical, but I think that there's definitely a phoned-in aspect of this. I'm hesitant to say useless cash grab because I think for the original cast and the original cast embodying the characters, they have a lot of fun with it, and it's really clear throughout the film. Like, there is some pretty good bits that are new, but also pay a little bit of homage to the first one. Like the broomstick bit that was quite funny. But at the same time, I feel like it's very, very bare bones. Like, just enough attention was given to the original cast, and they phoned in absolutely everything else. And I think Mothman's making a really good point in chat that, a lot of the time, particularly with Disney, you see it with video games and everything, the marketing team can really get ahead of themselves in a lot of this stuff because obviously it's quite easy to enjoy the frenzy and the hype of like social media. I mean, imagine being the marketing team when they announced Hocus Pocus 2 was a thing. Like, it's fucking easy likes and retweets and great metrics and it's like it's all good. But there's this kind of fine line, and I feel like it's hard for marketing teams to keep a lid on hype sometimes, to the point where it becomes like a kind of oversell or eventually and of course obviously because discourse starts really early, you also get a lot of like fan input as well, which I'm not sure that, like, again, this is like total speculation. I'm not saying that it's happened in the case of Hocus Pocus 2, but like if you have a massive amount of people all kind of speculating on what the plot might be or stuff like that, and you're working on that, it's probably quite hard to avoid it. But yeah, that's... I mean,
it's one of those, I genuinely miss the days where you didn't know something was being made until it was the pre-order was announced for a lot of things. It's a thing I've noticed a lot with fiction. You will literally see authors, I've seen it at least in some romance circles, where someone announces a project they're doing and someone goes, well, this element's problematic, and then the person ends up rewriting their whole story because of those comments. I'm going, well, how would you know it's problematic? Because you don't know how it's going to be handled. Yeah. This is you can say, well, yes, there are certain things that are inherently problematic, but someone on Twitter can easily tank someone else's entire creative thing by going, oh, well, you shouldn't be talking about this. I'm going, well, you don't know how they're going to talk about it. And that's a big thing. I've literally, I'm not going to name her, but there was a romance author who got panned for, and rightfully so, it was, after her ARCs got sent out, which an ARC is an advanced review copy, and it basically got sent out to the publishers send them out sometimes to be like, oh, let's get some reviews in, and the reviews that were coming in were horrific, and it was to do with an element of race that got missed, and it was basically the problem that had happened was there was no sensitivity reader on hire because they have swapped sensitivity reading for marketing readers, and also the most recent thing that I've called is they read them for problematic elements and they don't actually do any in-depth sensitivity reads. So you'll get very, very surface level pandering to things. You don't get any nuance with things. Again, thinking of, there's been a lot of stuff in the disability romance spheres where you have these people going, well, I write disability, romance, and you read it and it's a very surface level. Yeah, the person has a thing, but it's never looked into properly because the person's afraid of doing something problematic. Well, if you hire sensitivity readers, you can tackle it, but you shouldn't be doing that after the book's been announced. Those things happen before you get your marketing out there. Because what happens if they do turn around and say, well, actually, this entire thing needs to be reworked? Well, then you don't have time for it because you've already got your dates up, you've already got all the marketing done, and you can't change this thing. And it bothers me that the sensitivity reads are happening usually after marketing and promo has been done. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of films as well. They're not doing the research until they get marketing feedback, and that's the wrong way to be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak entirely for film or publishing, but I know from a games perspective, and maybe a good example of this is Cyberpunk 2077. But the marketing always starts super early for these projects because they need to get investors on board. They need to get the money people on board. So, basically, we're talking about capitalism. Who would have fucking thought on an iSphere podcast? But yeah, I think that does come into it quite a lot, where the marketing ends up being the tool, and engagement numbers on the marketing end up being the tool to get investors on board. This, look at how massive our Twitter's got, or look at how, look at the feedback we got from fans on this, and just being able to show that to the people who are going to put the money in is powerful. So it's because investors obviously want to minimize as much risk as possible. They want to make sure it's a sure thing prior to actually being a thing that can be called a sure thing, because otherwise it's not going to get funded, and the development won't be funded, which is obviously extremely frustrating for lots of industries, but is also just the nature of people effectively sitting on wealth until they know that they'll make more money off of it. And I think obviously there's people always talk about innovation and things like that, but real innovation comes from actually giving things a go. It's the same reason why we do clinical trials, for example. Clinical trials might amount to fuck all, but the one clinical trial that does amount to fuck all and actually gets it does amount to fuck, ends up getting a breakthrough in treatment for whatever. It's why we run things like that. And you never see that approach with kind of consumer entertainment media, because people want an absolute cast iron guarantee that they're going to earn money off it. And yeah, it's unfortunately it then leads to, when marketing gets that budget, they can then go out even further, and they end up getting caught up in the kind of crowd of, oh, I can't wait. Will it do that? Oh yeah, of course it'll do that.
Which is interesting. I was actually reading Terry Pratchett's autobiography actually published this week. And if any Discord fans, if you are getting ready to read it, be prepared to sob inconsolably. But there was a thing that I found really interesting with Terry, was he was getting offered, in publishing back in the day, if you were getting offered, 30 grand back in the day for an advance, that was big money. And then the bigger he got, they were offering him 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand. And he actually started saying, nope, I'm not doing it for that. He used to send his agent back to Random House Publishing and go, you're offering him too much money, scale it back. Because they were giving him so much money that he worried that he would not be able to live up to the hype. And he didn't want to be beholden to them for, oh, well, you didn't sell X amount of books, therefore you are, you're no longer the big seller we thought you were. And he's going, well, no, this is you. This is not a problem with me. People are still reading my stuff. It's that you are making my buyout higher and higher and higher. Therefore, there's more pressure for me to earn. There's more pressure for marketing. And he was going, that's not what I'm doing. I'm a writer. I don't want to have to do marketing. I don't want to he says, worrying about sales happens after the book is made. If you are paying me these huge sums of money in advance, I'm going to be worrying that I'm not making something good enough, because how come my book that sold 1 million copies, the first one you gave me for, you only paid me 75,000, and now you're saying, well, this one has to, how much does this next book have to sell to make up for the fact that you just paid me 230,000 for a book? You know, and he actively was like, nope, not doing it. It was a whole thing. It was a whole, like, his Rob Wilkins, who runs the estate, was like, he sent his agent back to them saying, offer me less money, because this is not a sustainable practice. And it's the issue that publishing now has. Publishers pay huge amounts of money to authors, hoping that they will get their money back. As we've talked about in other podcasts, some of these big name authors that they're promoting are selling less than a dozen copies.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I now do have a example for publishing, but what you've talked about in previous podcasts in regards to going to a traditional publisher and they ask for your personal social media following is that same equivalent of investor buy-in.
It is.
It's we want to make sure that you've already got a pre-existing audience that you can flog your book to, and they'll buy it because you're already in that bubble. So yeah, no, it's there is a comparison. Again, don't know enough about the film industry, but I imagine there must be some proof when pitching a film. Like you need to be able to like go and I don't know, offer it round the houses and see if there's any takers.
Yeah, it's very kind of, it's discouraging as a creative person in my own industry. It's very discouraging to see, again, if you're not continually outdoing yourself, things aren't just allowed to exist. Everything's got to be the next $1 billion earner for it to be successful. And I'm going, the fact that it even got made is successful.
Yeah.
The fact that a piece of media exists is a form of success because of the amount of work that goes into it. Why can we not value the work for what it is? Why does it have to be this? And the answer is basically capitalism.
Capitalism, baby. Yeah, I mean, that's like from a game marketing side of things. It's interesting doing a wee bit of research into it, and it's like, what's counted as an industry success and what isn't. And a lot of the times you get people with different views, but there is often this, like, the gold standard is like this amount of sales of your product, which for obviously it differs. If you're a solo developer and you put out a game and it sells and you get, I don't know, 20 grand from it, that's a reasonable success based on the time and energy you put into it. That 20 grand for a 30-person team who've been working on a game for 3 years, probably not as good. But you're still seeing this kind of like really, really big focus on like the kind of basic KPIs and metrics of like, how much did you do on Steam? Oh, there's a Holly Mop.
Hello.
We've got to put on the show now. Come on, you've got... Oh, stolen.
Here we go.
Take a shot every time capitalism's mentioned on the iosphere. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think it's definitely a thing that's like capitalism in general does have this impact on marketing. Marketing then impacts the story, and now we can get back to talking about Hocus Pocus. That was a tangent. That was one of our good tangents.
It was. It was a good one.
But yeah, so back to kind of Hocus Pocus, and I suppose the way that Disney kind of conducts itself with sequels. And I'm trying to think, is there anyone else doing sequels the way Disney's kind of doing them at the moment? Sequels / reboots where it's like entirely based on the nostalgia? There's probably some, but...
Disney's bought them all, so it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
They've acquired everybody, so you're kind of going, I don't know who would independently be doing it anymore because they've acquired everybody. Oh yeah, the new Lord of the Rings is a good example.
Yeah, new Lord of the Rings, that's fair. And I think, you know, I'm caught up with Lord of the Rings again. Don't want to spoil it.
I'm still not watching it. Yeah,
that's fair. It's interesting. It's the only way I can say it. It's interesting. There's lots of it that doesn't feel Lord of the Rings, but I know that that's based on my attachment to the Peter Jackson trilogy.
Yeah.
I think there's elements of it that I really like. I actually think the actress that's playing Galadriel, I think, is doing a really good job. But I kind of take, like, it's doing that TV show thing where it's like they've spun up too many stories to the point where lots of plot line kind of feels like filler. Like we've not quite got to the point where, like, the last episode that came out is by far the most like streamlined. It focuses very much on two aspects, or like two characters, or well, two events from two different points of view that end up meeting. And it's by far one of the best episodes. That I feel like there's quite a lot of spinning plates with the plot. I'm enjoying it though. Like it's good. Sometimes it feels a little bit too polished in a way that Peter Jackson's didn't. And Peter Jackson's was extremely polished. It was just not polished to the point of looking over polished. Yeah, I used polished way too many times.
I like the grunginess of the Stephen Jackson stuff. I like how imperfect it looks because it looks like a realistic fantasy setting. But from what I've seen of the Lord of the Rings of Power, it just looks very CGI to me, which I don't really enjoy that thing anymore. Like if it looks too uncanny valley, I'm not going to enjoy it because I will be spending all time going, why, where. I'm one of those annoying fantasy fans who wants to know what crops you're using. I want to know why, how are they staying clean? Like it's things like that where I'm going, right, well, how are these things happening? And Rings of Power doesn't really do that.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to like the first kind of scenes of Hobbiton and like Lord of the Rings Fellowship, and you see Merry and Pippin in like the farm, and then they crash in and they tumble down the hill, and there's the dirty carrot and stuff like that. Maybe that's a extended edition one, but like it's got that element to it where like
the world feels real.
The world feels real, and I feel like again I'm enjoying some of the stuff with Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. It is interesting, but it's sometimes a little bit too polished for my liking, and also sometimes a little bit too Game of Thrones for my liking.
Yes, everything's suffering from the Game of Thrones
ification.
I wouldn't say aesthetic, yeah, but the thing is, it's fantasy being written by people who don't like fantasy, and I hate that. And it's because it's popular, and they're going, well, we're trying to make it popular. It's going, it is popular. It's just not popular with the popular kids. So because the D&D, whatever their name was, they did Game of Thrones, they openly talked about how they hated fantasy. And I'm like, why are you making a fantasy series if you hate it? Yeah.
I'm actually, I really don't like this weird split between you're either fantasy or you're sci-fi. I feel like that's been imposed culturally. I don't think like you can enjoy both. Like I think there's people who are maybe better at writing one or the other, but like I feel it is very strange for me when I see sci-fi versus fantasy discourse online, because it's like, I like Mass Effect and I like Dragon Age. There's
a large part of it is pushback from when sci-fi and fantasy were lumped together as the same genre when they're not. So that's a large part of that pushback, is it was a lot of people going, oh well, you know, for a long time it was sci-fi / fantasy, and that's how the genre would be catalogued.
Yeah.
And that the pushback for, well, no, it's one or the other. Because I literally did my dissertation on the genre and how it evolved, and how fantasy is the mythology, and the kind of the sci-fi becomes the parables about what you want to have happen. But a lot of that pushback came from that, and now it's gone completely too far. And it's like, no, you're one or the other. It's going, no, that's not the distinction. I mean, it's literally both.
Yeah, I did enjoy the meme that many arts of night is put in chat. If it's coin, it's fantasy. If it's credits, it's sci-fi. Which, like, yeah, it's good. And Grey Tree, I do agree that like there's bits in Lord of the Rings where like it is incredibly slow. Like the stuff that's happening in like Numenor for the past couple of episodes has been like very, very slow. And I think like, again, they're spinning lots of plates because they've got to have reference to like all the characters. There's the Pradfoots or the Proudfoots, which are kind of pre-hobbits, are part of it, and I find some of that stuff a bit tedious. But like you end up with some characters being way more fleshed out than the others. The Harfoots, sorry. I'm thinking Proudfoots because I'm pretty sure that is a Hobbit surname. But I think that there's some areas that have been like really, really fleshed out, because there was 1 or 2 episodes where the Harfoots don't actually make an appearance at all. And yeah, it's just, again, the spinning plates thing, because one of the problems, like, I suppose we've spoken about this before, but like The Walking Dead ran into a massive problem with spinning plates because they had so many different characters and they just could not do episodes with them all interacting. It had to be, I think season 3 was probably the worst for it, where they were balancing like the town and the prison. It was a pain. We're jumping across multiple TV shows now. But yeah, I suppose
within tangents.
Yeah, tangents within tangents. So what's your overall view of this second Hocus Pocus film?
It's fun and enjoyable, but I will probably never watch it again. I am no longer the target audience for it, which is absolutely fair. I'm not a child anymore. But I think with Hocus Pocus 1, there were things that the adults could enjoy as well. And I think the only thing the adults can enjoy with this is Bette Midler going ham with the vocals.
I kind of thought that, like, again, I've not been surrounded by Hocus Pocus fans for all my life, but like I thought the singing in the first film was like fun, but I didn't see it as like a core part of the cat. Was that the big thing in that film? No, right.
The big thing was, I mean, because Bette Midler's not just a singer; she's obviously a singer and an actress.
Yeah,
but it was the singing was only a one scene thing, and it wasn't the selling point for the movie. It was a fun thing where, oh look, we're letting these people go ham and they're singing and having fun. It's the thing that she was best known for.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the main draw of the movie. The main draw of the movie was it's a fun Halloween movie.
So for those of you who, like me 24 hours ago, had never seen Hocus Pocus, there's a scene in the first film where there's like an it's Halloween, and there's an adult Halloween party, all adults, so they're all like the mum and dad of Max and the wee lassie are there, and they're dressed up. The mum's Madonna and the dad's a vampire, and the witches end up doing this kind of like musical number on stage where they sing a song, but throughout the song they actually cast a spell that gets all of the adults to essentially like dance until they're dead. So they're just constantly dancing for the rest of the night. And it's fun, but it's just a way to make it so that the kids can't rely on any adults for the rest of the film. Like that's the main bit. Whereas in the second film, and again, spoilers, but like they do it again. They just do it again, and it doesn't capture the fun of the scene from the first film. They
also start off with a song. As soon as they resurrected, they're singing, and I'm going, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
And they sing in the end credits. So it's like they've put way more weight on the singing than the first film did. And I don't know. Maybe there's a reason for that, but it didn't sound like that's what I knew the characters for.
The witches were more popular than the kid characters, which makes sense because the witches were fantastic in Hocus Pocus 1. But it's really just a kid's film about the witches at this point. It's like, sorry, I can't see who it was in the comments. It was the difference between a family film versus a kid's film. Hocus Pocus 2 really much feels like a kid's film, whereas Hocus Pocus 1 felt like a family film.
Yeah.
And it's a subtle difference, but it's a difference all the same.
I wonder how, and again, this might be kind of cynical, but like, I wonder how much Disney is banking on people who do their yearly watch of Hocus Pocus, finishing Hocus Pocus and going, fuck it, we'll just put on the second one. Like,
I think it's high.
I reckon that like that'll get it viewed and it'll earn its money that way. We might as well watch the sequel, that kind of thing. But you're not getting much, because I feel like it's not a completion of the story either. You know, like it doesn't feel like a story 29 years in the making from the first one. It's kind of a repeat, and like again, I did notice this. So they did try and get the young lassie from the first film back, but she was obviously not so pivotal to the story that they really did need her, because she was just on another project. And like, I'm surprised there wasn't a greater attempt to try and get a cameo or even have it centered around her a wee bit more. You know what I mean? It seemed, obviously the big draw is the three witches reprising their role, but there's, apart from that, there is no connection to the first film beyond a couple of references, and it tends to be the references that the witches are making themselves. You know, there's a scene where they come across the black cat in the witch shop, and they think it's the same immortal cat from the first film. And you know what, actually, okay, I'm going to spoil it. Hocus Pocus 2 is missing a talking cat that cracks jokes. And that was the thing that stuck out the most for me, actually, was like, there wasn't that like, there was obviously a greater...
They gave that role to Billy.
Yeah, which wasn't, no.
Wasn't the best choice. I love Doug Jones, or Doug Jones, Doug Walker. I've just completely blanked on his name. Doug Jones, that was I. Yeah. They gave him a bigger role, and he made it into a very Captain Jack Sparrow character, which is not who Billy was in the original. I mean, we saw Billy was mostly silent for the first.
Because he had his mouth stitched together.
Yeah, and then you had a couple of iconic lines that happened, but he wasn't a Jack Sparrow, because they even copied the Jack Sparrow mannerisms, which I thought was weird.
It was very... Yeah, it was definitely leaning towards that kind of like Jack Sparrowiness. and then like he becomes a side character with the shop owner. You'll notice I don't know these people's names. Like
the shop owner was Gilbert.
Yeah, Gilbert the Great is what he called himself or something like that. So he's pretending to be a wizard who like knows about all the witches. And he's the tie-in to the first film. So he's apparently one of the kids that was almost caught by the witches in the first film back in 1993. And it just, I don't know. It's very I thought it was quite weak.
It was.
And so it's a weak connection, and then because he's a character, they have to try and do something with him, and that doesn't.
The character that would have made more sense would be the mayor, who is supposedly the descendant of the Reverend. Like if they went to that whole trouble of giving us the Sanderson sisters backstory and the villain of the Reverend, and then you find out that the descendant is the current mayor of the town.
Yeah.
That would have been the logical tie-in. That would have been the logical either villain or whatever. But they didn't do that. It was just a kind of vague. You know
what would have made it. You know what would have made the film better? See if they'd actually just have the mayor playing the Reverend at the start. That would have been a good enough link. Like I don't see the reason why they needed another actor for that, because he appears once and then doesn't appear again. And that just having that, like, oh, it's an ancestor that looks exactly like the person would have been a bit better. But again, it's kind of like a lot of the jokes from the first film are repeated. Like there's a lot of the witches discovering modern technology, and there's a really, really cheesy scene where they go into a supermarket and they're mystified by the automatic doors. And they think that the wee lassie that's just went through the automatic doors must also have great power. And then so they go into, was it a Walgreens or something like that?
Yeah, Walgreens.
And it's like the most like product placement-y fucking sequence ever, because they go into like the face cream body wash aisle, and that's all the potions, and it's terrible.
Excuse me.
I didn't like that scene at all. Like it's probably extreme. Like it's just forgettable. But they go around and do like they're joking. They're picking up bottles of like anti-aging cream that have names like fucking Tresemme or whatever, and it's like, Tresemme, is that the name of the child that was put into this cream? And it's just very I don't know.
Yeah, it was a very weird. I thought the bit with Instagram filters was fun. I thought that was a good oh look, the Instagram filter has de-aged us. This is how we really are. And it was a fun little dig at how unrealistic a lot of our current social media interaction is.
Yeah, because there's a bit immediately afterwards where they turn around and you've got the big circular mirror that you see in a lot of stores, and it's like elongated their faces and all the rest of it, and they freak out and they say that the little box, the iPhone, lied to us. Sorry, I'm just looking at your dog looking up into your face.
She's interested. She can hear you through my headset, and she keeps looking at me going, who is that?
Who the hell is that? Shut him up. But yeah, there's some good bits. So like in the first film, there's a sequence where there's one missing broom, and they're in like a store, and instead one of the witches puts a hoover between her legs and is able to take off, and they kind of repeat that joke in the second film, but this time it's two Roombas that she surfs on, which is,
and then she says cowabunga, and I'm going,
she said cowabunga. I was like, where are you getting that from? They didn't, unless they watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 1993. But yeah, one of the witches says cowabunga in the film, and you're like, what?
She's like, I'm surfing, man, cowabunga. And I'm like,
Yeah, so yeah, it's funny, and then
it's a fun scene, but it was just such an out of character thing to say.
Yeah, it's when a joke take makes it into the movie, maybe, but yeah, it was weird for them to keep Cowabunga in, because the scene where she comes, like, they all come out the shop and one of them's grabbed like an actual broom, and one of the other ones has, like, they've all gone down a level, so one of them has a Hoover, and the other one comes out with 2 Roombas on her feet, and takes off, and that's like, you know, it's a not bad joke. It's like, it's good.
It's the logical adaptation of that joke. Yeah,
and then there's probably a wee bit too long. Obviously, it was kind of a Chekhov's gun, because they mentioned the Roombas too often for it not to have an impact on the story further down the line, which, again, I feel like we have spoken about the entire film now, pretty much, but hopefully we've been patchy enough in our coverage of it that you can watch it and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's what they're talking about. But yeah, it's like, it's a fun watch. Is it as significant as the first film? Fuck no. It's nowhere near it.
I don't think it'll become a cult classic. I think it'll just be one of those kind of, I was gonna say, a Disney sequel that dies away quietly.
But I think for me, that's what, to me, makes it so kind of cynical, I suppose. It's like, it's not been designed with, like, lasting meaning into the like the Hocus Pocus cinematic universe. It's not a film that's been designed with, like, great care. This is the fantastic sequel that came 29 years after the first film. Instead, it's more of a again, I can't describe it as a cheap cash-in, but it is lazy in its approach to a modern day take on it.
Definitely is. The story, I think the story writing is what makes it that way, because the visual effects are stunning. It's not like other Disney sequels where it's kind of janky and you can tell that not a lot of effort's been put into it.
Put it this way, it almost looks like they paid the special effects team and the graphic design team a wee bit. It doesn't sound like they've pulled a Marvel.
No.
Like, there was no, like, really atrocious uses of CGI, except maybe the bird, the weird bird. There was like a weird bird on it. A brief touch into politics, as Gray's mentioned. Exit poll in Brazil has Lula beaten Bolsonaro in just one round. Ooh, fingers crossed. We want Bolsonaro out. Well, I do.
Yeah. That was wrong.
So I didn't mean to imply that you didn't. I was more of I can't speak for we as everyone watching. But yeah, I mean, I think again, Disney's approach to sequels and very much hanging on the coattails of nostalgia, I think it is leading them to produce some utter garbage at the moment, and I don't think there's a single. I don't think there's been, like, a single reboot or sequel that's been done. Like, I'm just like, I haven't seen Mulan. I have heard atrocious things about their take on Mulan. I feel like that's maybe one that we could watch at some point, Joy, for this podcast. It could be another one of our movie ones. We have we've had tons of people telling us to watch Arcane. I got a little bit into the first episode and then stopped because I wasn't in the headspace for it, but Arcane is definitely something that people want us to talk about on the stream. You'll probably have to give us a wee bit of time for it, though, is the only thing.
Yeah, it takes a while to get through.
We'll have to digest it, and then we'll have to kind of, like, understand it. And I don't know anything about League of Legends, so I don't, like. Yeah. I've been told I can watch it with a knowing fuck all about League of Legends. I would like to keep it that way, to be honest. I don't want to touch League of Legends, with a barge pole. I will watch Arcane, but I do not want to. I do not want to deal with that. So I'm saying, have people? What is the comment that Hex is replying to? For some reason, I can't click on it and hop. Have people told you to watch The Legend of Vox Machina? No. No. Is that another anime type thing, or what's that?
Vox Machina is based, isn't it based on Critical Role's D&D campaign or whatever?
Oh, right, okay.
I've seen Vox Machina. I enjoyed it. I have not felt the urge to watch it again. It's fun. It's fun.
Okay.
If another one comes out, I will probably watch it. But in the meantime, I have for whatever reason, I have no inclination to watch it again.
Cool.
So I would if people wanted to talk about it.
I'll watch it. I'm not watching Legend of Korra. I think that'll upset some people in chat, but I tried to watch Legend of Korra, and I've spoken about this before, but I really don't like massive time jumps in the same universe. I don't know what it is, but like I hated going from. It was probably because it was right after I finished watching Avatar that I decided to jump to Legend of Korra, and it was like the cars and the built up city with the skyscrapers was just worlds apart from like all the quaint wee towns and like very like medieval's maybe the wrong word, but like kind of like I don't know. There was just something quite nice about the setting of Avatar, and going from that to Legend of Korra was just a bit too much. And then I looked up the time jump, and apparently there's a section where like they managed to fool the knowledge bird from The Last Airbender, like with like a radio or something like that. And I was like, nah, can't I do that? I'm sure the characters would be lovely and they'd grow on me and all the rest of it, but now like, nah, not really into all of that. Like again, just the time jump thing's a bit weird. I actually really struggle with a lot of media that tries to straddle, like, see a lot of like the kind of colonial type games I really struggle with. Like, see Fable, like Fable 3 in particular, really hate it. Really, like, just don't like the world. Don't like the... I don't know, there's something about it. Same with, was it Greedfall?
Greedfall, yeah.
Couldn't get into Greedfall on account of, like, I get that there's a bit of magic, and I get that there's guns, and then, of course, you go over to that, and, you've got to talk to the tribe, the natives, and I just, nah.
And then they make it so that you are part native, so it's okay for you to do the things that you're doing. And it's
I didn't know. To be honest, I don't think I remember getting to the island because I was doing like some of the side quest stuff, and it was just like, nah, I just couldn't. But yeah, I think my time with Greedfall was very much obviously the mark on your character's face means something. Like I could tell that right off.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I think like kind of what Grey Tree's saying in chat is like Greedfall kind of gives you this weird ick. Like I don't mind steampunk stuff. But
a lot of steampunk is not apologetic for colonialism, whereas what good steampunk should be an exploration of how colonialism affects things. Yeah. But it doesn't. It takes it as a jolly old empire. You know, it's very cringy for a lot of these things. And I say that as a fan of steampunk. There was a lot of originally very good steampunk that did explore these themes, but then it became about cogs and gears and jolly old Britannia, and it's like.
To be honest, I think that's one of the things that probably gives me the ick the most about like your kind of Greedfall type thing. Is it very much is like cosplay British Empire. You get to be
Yeah.
you get to be a noble who's a governor, and you get to go out, and it's just like, I don't know.
But
it
you
just
can be
feels-
a good one.
Yeah. All you have to do is just treat the natives right, and it's very. Nah, I'm not a fan of it. I'm trying to think of. There was a series of books that I read when I was younger, and there was the. You remember Stardust?
Yes.
The film, yeah, and the book. But you know the pirates in that.
The lightning pirates.
The lightning pirates. Is that steampunk? Does that count as steampunk?
Again, because it uses magic instead of science, it is Gaslamp.
Oh, it's Gaslamp. Okay.
And a lot of people don't understand the difference between Gaslamp and steampunk. Gail Carragher markets herself as steampunk. She is actually Gaslamp because there is magic in her world. Steampunk should be purely
science-based, mechanical.
Science-based. Yeah, there shouldn't be magic in steampunk. It should be science-based. So your thing should not be powered by magic crystals. It should be powered by steam or coal or oil or...
But surely because it's lightning, does that not count? Kind of lightning? Is that magic?
They're flying through magic, though.
Oh, right, are they? I thought they were flying because it was powered by the lightning.
The way that they fly is the magic gets... The lightning gets sold to magic users.
Yeah.
Is how it works. So it's having the magic in the universe that makes it Gaslamp. But steampunk is more marketable because more people understand what steampunk is. Stardust was by Neil Gaiman, and it got turned into a movie not too long ago. It's a star that falls to Earth, and young hero goes on journey to claim star, falls in love, and witches happen, basically. It's good. I do like Stardust. But yeah, it is Gaslamp. It is not steampunk.
Right.
Neil Gaiman tends towards Gaslamp more than steampunk, but again, steampunk is more marketable.
Right, okay. So here's a book series that you may or may not have read. Have you ever read The Edge Chronicles?
No.
Right. Does anyone in chat... did I imagine this? The Edge Chronicles. Right, so there was like... What was it? The Curse of the Gloamglozer was like the kind of pre-one. There was like... So it was like... I don't know what they call it. 3 trilogies? What is 3 trilogies? Chronicles, maybe, I suppose, but
Chronicles, yeah.
It was split into 3 trilogies, and no, it is it is not an erotica because it's called The Edge Chronicles. That's something else. But yeah, it was there was these books called The Edge Chronicles, and I was never sure if it was Gaslamp or if it was steampunk. I think it was steampunk, but there was like sky pirates in that. And there was... I remember them being amazing. I fucking devoured them as a kid, and now I can't remember a single thing about them. I remember there was like kind of evil bird people that went to war at the end, maybe.
I'm looking at it, and it looks more like Gaslamp to me just from the covers, from the marketing.
Right, okay.
And also, for fun terms, a 9-part series is called an enology.
Enology? Fair enough. But yeah, so it was called The Edge Chronicles. And to be honest, it was one of those series of books that was just really fucking good. Like, it almost makes me want to go back and explore them. And actually, holy shit, there was 4 trilogies. That's nuts. So, and like, I think it was a family. So there was the Quint trilogy, the Twig trilogy, the Rook trilogy, and then the Cade trilogy, which I do not remember.
So the dodecology, apparently, according to this.
Damn.
Is what that would be. There's all these things that I was not aware of because I've never gone above a certain number before, but a series of 20 books is called an icosology.
Right, okay. Because
these are messing up with my speech. There's all these double P's and S's. It's not going to work well for my speech problems.
wait until you hear that there's also like a chronological order that is like all over the place. Because you got like Beyond the Deep Woods was the first one, and that came out in 98. Then you had Storm Chaser and Midnight Over Sanctifrax. Then you went back to like, I think it was Twig's dad. and then you hopped over to like another person. I was fucking all over the place. I wasn't sure if it ended, but it looks like the last book came out in 2019, so I imagine it is ended because they were publishing it pretty consistently. And there was a lot. There was fucking loads, which is impressive. But yeah, that was that was just a random fucking series of books that popped into my head. Like Chronicles, you've heard me talk about the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness, though. That's like that's excellent. If anyone has ever read the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness, say hi in chat, because Wolf Brother and Spirit Walker and all the rest, the world building in that is absolutely phenomenal. It was was it Michelle Paver that did them?
I think so.
I think it was. But Wolf Brother's one of my favourite books. And fun fact about that, but every year in primary school, there was a Burns competition where you had to recite Robert Burns poetry. And the first time I won that competition, it coincided with World Book Day, and that was when like the big cabinets came in where it was like you could like go and buy books basically, but the winner got to select a book for free, and Wolf Brother was one of the ones that I picked up, and that's been like that's my story, but that was how I was introduced to the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness, because I won a Burns competition, so it was kind of meant
that
to be.
With Philip Pullman.
What was it?
Philip Pullman, the Subtle Knife, which put me on his Dark Materials trilogy.
Nice. There was another one I read, and it was very, very, very YA. I'm like just looking them up now. But it was Lord Loss, by Darren O'Shan.
Never heard that one.
So Darren O'Shan, he did a vampire series, that was made into a film. I think there was I want to say there's a recent film, but I don't think there was. But yeah, it was Darren Shan's like Demonata series is what it was called. And
that's right, yeah.
It was like the most cursed up fucking shit ever. Like for a young boy reading about demons like graphically ripping off the heads of like protagonists is like not anything that you'd really read in a book up until then. Well, like some of the to be honest, I almost want to reread them just to see if it still
The
lands.
Vampire's Assistant was the movie.
Yeah, Vampire's Assistant, that was that. I get the feeling that like all of the Darren Shan stuff's probably like, I don't want to say aged horribly, but I imagine it.
Bit of a gore fest.
Yeah, like gore fest to the expense of storytelling, but like it's like I think every night or something, the wee boy or whatever has to like battle a demon in a game of chess or something like that. He kills his family or some shit. I don't know how. I've forgotten how it works, but it's another one of those ones where like you read an entire series when you're young and it just embeds into your skull. What we need is we don't need sequels from these. What I'm saying is Disney, don't sanitize the Demonata trilogy or quadrilogy.
Can you imagine if they tried though? Like they give the demons a relatable backstory that explains why they murder children and their families if they don't win chess.
Yes. And that's it. So there was one that stood out, and there's a book called Beck in this Demonata trilogy. Or fucking hell, it's not, there's 10 books. It's not a quadrilogy at all. It's 10 books, but it's the Demonata series. And there's one called Beck, and it takes place like 400 AD during ancient Ireland's conversion from paganism to Christianity. And I remember that one standing out. It's equally cursed, but there's just a lot of stuff that goes on. It's very strange.
Mm-hmm. I think that there was a big boom in that, and when we were, I say we, I'm aware that I'm ancient, but when I was younger, there there was a lot of that sort of young adult fiction coming out at that time. Like I remember the Witch's Child books. I don't know if anyone else remember them. And it was self-insert. You were reading it in the first person, and it was about a girl being evicted from the UK somewhere, going to the colonies in the US, and it was about how her witchcraft was.
That rings a bell. I don't know.
I've never been able to find it since. And it feels like a fever dream because she ends up living with the Native Americans because they accept her witchcraft as opposed to the Christian settlers. It was a weird book. But I remember getting that at a Scholastic book fair. But I remember you could literally at one point you could stick your hand out and you can grab a witchcraft or demon book from that thing. And that led to the kind of the satanic panic we're currently dealing with. Because you have all the kids that grew up with that are suddenly writing their own content, and you've got all these parents that are suddenly concerned about, oh, well, I didn't read any of that weird stuff when I was that age, and it's like, well, it's just fiction, But it's interesting to see how things like Stranger Things is so readily embraced by certain peoples, and it's. Full disclosure, I have not watched Stranger Things.
I've not watched it either. I've been kind of meaning to, but not really. Like, people have been telling me that it's a good watch, but I'm like,
I've just not gotten into it. It's a lot of commitment for things a time I don't have. But yeah, great tea, Scott. I can't help but enjoy how an hour talking with I shifts into Joy's accent. It does. I don't often get to use my accent anymore. But it is.
This is our weekly fix.
This is me getting my fix of my Scottish accent, my weekly one for that. But it's weird to see the shift in media and the fact that we're currently dealing with going back to Hocus Pocus 2, you have a very woke representation of witchcraft, which was not something I would have had as a child at all. Like I had Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but it was nowhere near based on its earth worship, and it was very much still fantastical, zappy, special effects magic. Whereas now you have literally in a story that is very camp witchcraft, you have girls that are engaging with very much real world pagan spiritual sort of things. Like you could literally have walked into any magic store, probably in Salem, and you would have got the same things for sale. So it's a really interesting how it's changed, because when I was a kid it was weird and wrong to like the witchcraft stuff, and now it's kind of like, oh, that's just trendy, that's just normal. But then you still have some people panicking over it. I dare say there will be some people still pearl clutching over the fact that it's a story about basically teenage girl empowerment is what Hocus Pocus 2 is. Even though it misses the mark, that's what it's trying to do.
It's weird. Yeah. It's weird seeing a kind of swing and a miss for that storyline, because you're right. It is absolutely trying to nail that, like, growing empowerment of the three characters, like the three protagonists. But it's very weak at the end. It kind of. I'm not saying it pulls its punches. I think it doesn't know what it's actually aiming for, but like.
And then it's also the end when they're going, are the sisters really gone? Are they really gone? I guess we'll never know. And it's just like, oh, this is going to become
another 29 years. They're fucking. I don't know, does Bette Midler have another 29 years in her? I don't know how old she is in the film.
She's 70 something now.
Right, okay, we're probably calling it.
Ages with my mum, so that's not that Mum, you're not old if you're listening.
Perfectly young. Does the Discord do watch parties, is what Panicorn is asking. Yes, we do intend on doing some watch parties.
I used to host SideTube ones. SideTube unfortunately no longer works with a lot of things. We do occasionally have watch parties. Which brings us on maybe to something fun to talk about as we close. For spooky season, myself and Mothman are going to be doing a lot of watch parties. So come join us. I will be posting about it a lot in my Discord, but also on the Tumblr as well. I'll maybe even drop a link in I's Discord if he's fine with me doing that, and we can just have a
no,
watch
that's
around.
banned actually. How dare you? Nah, I think there's probably a good time to wrap up. One thing I do want to mention though, and just because I've got another series in my mind that I'm desperate to shout out. In fact, no, fuck it, I've got two. There's Skullduggery Pleasant. I'm not sure if anyone knows Skullduggery Pleasant, but it basically gave birth to a whole bunch of like horrible like memes, because all of the covers are of like a skeleton man in a suit and a fedora and like a tie, like with flames surrounding him, and it basically gave all of the like the hard people, or the people who see themselves as alpha, like, I don't concern myself with the opinion of sheep. Like, you see those quotes beside the flaming skull.
Could very much see that from this, yes.
Yeah, so that's one of them. The other one was Gone. Do you remember the Gone series? It was probably a bit too YE for you at
Gone series characters.
Gone.
I remember the covers, but I didn't read them.
Gone was fantastic. Gone was actually probably the best book, but it was basically everyone over the age of 16 magically disappears from this town, and there's a giant dome basically, and all like some of the teenagers get superpowers and other teenagers don't, and then they all start killing each other. It was really good. But yeah, that's those. There's like the kind of series that I went through. Of course, there's a whole bunch of other ones. Actually, I really like Noughts and Crosses. If anyone has a chance to read Noughts and Crosses, I would recommend it. That was my first.
I'm now just looking all these up because I don't know any of these.
So Noughts and Crosses was really, really good. And I think it was trying to turn into series, but it was Mallory Blackman.
You're not talking about Mallory Blackman. I've read some of Mallory Blackman's stuff, yeah.
Mallory Blackman's Noughts and Crosses is fantastic. Is absolutely brilliant. And it was the first time I ever read like full-on sex scenes, which as a teenage boy, I was like, I'm actually reading this for a change.
I'm trying to think. Mine's was probably Melvin Burgess was the time I read actual sex scenes intended for my age, and it was all from the perspective of boys, so it was very jarring for me, because it was Melvin Burgess is a very nitty gritty dark author, and a lot of it was drug use and dick jokes and all sorts of other stuff, so that was very strange for me to read that as the age I was at. But,
just for everyone in chat, Noughts and Crosses as in like the X
Noughts and Noughts and Crosses, not the werewolf vampire thing. Not
the werewolf vampire thing. Crucifix nail nipples. But no, that is a thing. Apparently, it's now a TV series as well. There's a BBC adaptation, which I can imagine is horrible. But
it's the BBC.
But the book is excellent, and I would really encourage anyone. It was like, it's interesting. So it's Mallory Blackman, and it's an alternative history where the black people, or crosses people, rule over the white Noughts. That's right, baby. The whites are the underclass in this universe. But it's quite interesting in that regard, because it does look at kind of race dynamics and the end of segregation. The Noughts, the white people, start to go to a cross school, and there's the tension around that, and then there's a fucking terrorist organization in it that are like fighting for not rights, and it's very it's weird, but like it centers around kind of like two characters, and they end up shagging, I think. And
I think so, yeah.
There's like, I remember there's a lot of, I think it was like one per book. You got one, but it was like some pretty well described YA teenage heavy-handed sex scenes.
I remember reading Blackman's Pig Heart Boy. That is what I remember from Mallory Blackman, was Pig Heart Boy, which is, I think it's the story of a heart transplant. I think possibly I might be remembering it wrong. The viral, described as Guardian is a powerful story. It shows the life of a teenage boy with a viral heart transplant. And
Okay.
I remember the children's BBC because it aired at the same time as The Queen's Nose. I'm sure that just sounds like gibberish to all the Americans watching or listening in.
Yeah.
But I remember Pig Heart, and it was the boy was kind of dying from his thing, and his family finds out they're pregnant with another baby, and it was a very Blackman wrote a lot of, still does apparently, looking at our bibliography, but it's a very kind of at the time it was incredibly diverse for what was available in the UK for young adult from a mainstream publisher.
Yeah, I mean, like, so putting the plot of the drama, I'm not sure if this is still the case in the books, but the plot of the TV series takes place in present-day London in an alternative history where 700 years prior, several nations in West Africa combined to form the powerful African Empire and colonize Europe. After a conflict known as the Great World War, control of Europe is split between different African nations, with mainland Europe under the control of the Malian Empire and the Moors, whereas Albion, comprising of Great Britain and Ireland, and parts of Scandinavia remained under the thumb of the African Empire. And it's like a completely different alternate thing. I can't believe it's called Albion. That makes me want to throw up a little bit, but hey. But yeah, honestly, if like it again, it's quite YA, but at the same time, I reckon it could stand up today easily. It was a really good book. Alt history is a fun genre. It's literally the only way I can play Hearts of Iron 4. I can't play Hearts of Iron 4 normally because I get bored. Instead, I go, well, what would happen if Scotland broke off midway through? I try not to.
That's how I think that's pretty much how Mothman plays the Crusader Kings games.
Yeah.
That's like, pretty much how he plays.
There's a horrible, like, if you check out my In Defense of Scottish Gaelic video, there's a really bad joke in about, like, I think the first kind of 10 minutes where I played, I don't know why I didn't just hack my way to kind of victory here, but I was playing to get footage for this video, and I played 173 hours of a campaign to turn the entirety of the world into Scotland. There was not a single other, like, country on the map. And but the problem is that you couldn't turn Americas into Scotland. So you had to colonize sections of America. So I ended up with things like Albaska and, like, I think it was Scalifornia and, like, Spirou.
California.
I was just like Scalifornia. I was like Sexico was one of them, and yeah, Scotland Down Under, because like you couldn't colonize, like you couldn't take ownership off. I think you had to just like straight up do it. And I was like, look, this is what would happen if everyone in Scotland spoke Gaelic. We'd take over the world naturally. That's a joke, by the way. Right, okay. And with that, do you want to wrap up, Joy?
Yeah. Thank you as ever for listening and watching. If you are currently with us in the chat, don't go anywhere. You still get an extra 10 minutes of chatting time with myself and I. But yeah, thank you as ever for watching. I hope you enjoyed our tangents within tangents about Hocus Pocus 1 and 2, and hopefully see you next week.
Cool. See you later, folks. Hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.